Common network attacks like DDoS can tank your systems, millions lost while hackers giggle in the shadows. This is Intellectual Point. We help you get a high earning career in tech. From DDoS floods to sneaky MITM eavesdropping and DNS poisoning, networks face a multitude of threats. IT pros are the heroes. Network engineers spot weird traffic, incident responders wrestle with DDoS chaos, and SOC analysts wield SIEM-like cyber detectives. For example, in 2020, AWS faced a record-smashing 2.3 terabit per second DDoS. Think digital Armageddon. Firewalls, CDNs, and traffic filters swooped in, saving the day. Hackers got nothing but a timeout. For more details on common network attacks, I'll hand it off to Steven.
Next is network-based attacks. So we've done malware, different types of physical attacks that they can perform. Now we're on to network attacks. And now we've got, first up is DDoS. Now, a DDoS is a distributed denial of service attack, and it's a sophisticated and malicious attempt to disrupt operations. That's what it is. Its goal is to disrupt a functioning server, service, or network by overwhelming it with a flood of traffic from multiple sources. This is called distributed because distributed means multiple sources. So, denial of service from multiple sources. And what this is really is it's a bad guy who is sticking a computer, like a server, into a room. And it's this guy right here. He's all in this room. And what he's doing is he's contriving a situation where he's sticking a bunch of other people in this room, and he's telling them all to talk to him at the same time. And when this happens, how many conversations do you think this person can have? He can't have a lot. It's going to overwhelm him and shut him down. It will cause a system shutdown. If the bad guy figures out how to do this with your computer, he gets a bunch of computers to all talk to your computer at the same time, he can recreate this situation. He has found a way to use multiple computers to overwhelm one computer and shut it down. Just like a human in a gym who has all these people around him talking to him all at the same time, it would shut you down. You wouldn't be able to perform any functions or have any conversations. We can do the same thing to a computer. And if we use multiple computers to do it, that's considered a DDoS, okay? Now, we also have just a DOS. You notice the second D is missing here, and that's a denial of service attack. That means it went from multiple to single. So the difference between a DDoS and a DOS is simply multiple. See how there's multiple Ds? Multiple Ds. Versus a single D. Single entity is single D, right? So denial of service is a malicious attempt to do the same thing. It disrupts the normal functioning of a targeted server. So our bad guy is going to find a clever way to use one entity to shut down another entity, okay? That the attacker finds a method of attack using a single computer, a single entity that will overwhelm another computer, single vector, whatever it is. Same thing here. He figures out how to shut you down just using one human being. Look at how confused you look. What? I don't understand what you're saying. It shuts the computer down. Denial of service. Computers are designed to serve. Servers are literally named after what they're providing, services. If we can shut down services, then that is a DOS. If we do it with a single entity. If we do it with multiple entities, it's DDoS. Let's talk about an amplification attack. This is a way for an attacker to do DOS/DDoS using what's called amplification. An amplification attack is a type of DOS attack in which an attacker exploits a vulnerable system or service to generate a significantly larger amount of traffic directed at a target. This allows the attacker to amplify the volume of attack traffic, making it much more difficult to the target to handle the potentially overwhelming it with requests. This involves use of publicly accessible servers or services that respond to requests. So what the attacker is doing is, I'll give you an example. You're sitting at home trying to enjoy your TV show. Here you are over here watching your TV. Here's your TV, you're watching your show. You got your phone right next to you, and I'm a bad guy. And I'm going to try to find a company or a service or something over here to try to start calling you. So I'm going to reach out to a charity. I'm going to reach out to a bunch of charities and say, hey, I know somebody who wants to donate. Call this number. I give them your phone number. This is your phone number. I give a bunch of companies, charities, pizza places, I don't know, whatever, a bunch of different companies, your number. They all start calling your number over and over and over again. That is a technique I can use right there. That's an amplification. I am finding a way to use third-party services to amplify the amount of traffic coming into you. Now, that analogy isn't quite it, but it's close enough. Amplification attacks typically involve the use of publicly accessible services that respond to requests. The attacker sends a small request to these services, which then generate a large response that is sent to the target. I.e., imagine asking for information about buying a car. You say one thing, hey, I'd like information about buying a car. Then you have a bunch of loan officers calling you and they want to talk to you for an extended period of time. That was a small request sent out with a large return. This is what's happening in the computers. The key to the amplification attack is the amplification factor, which is the ratio of the size of the response to the size of the request. For example, if an attacker sends a request of 64 bytes and receives a response of 1,000 bytes, the amplification factor is approximately 15.6 times. So you returned 15.6 times. So the attacker is looking for any service they can use where a small amount of data is sent, but it returns way more. And then he's going to use as many of these as he can to overwhelm your computer, and that is going to shut your computer down. You can use DNS for this. Denise, DNS, Domain Name System. DNS is the Information Help Desk of the Internet. She is the Google Maps of the Internet. Denise is in charge of telling your computer how to get from point A to B on the Internet. So if your computer doesn't know how to get to Disney World, your computer will go to Denise and say, Denise, I need a map to Disney World. DNS says, no problem. I'll get a map for you, gives your computer the map. Your computer now has a map to get to B. Now, this is a service that runs for everybody on the Internet. So we can use this for amplification because we make a small request to Denise, like, can you give me the map to Disney World? And Denise is going to give us a bunch of information so that we can get to Disney World. That's amplifying information in return. Attackers can send DNS queries with the source IP address set to the target's IP. So the bad guy can say, hey, I'm this guy over here. I'm you watching TV. And they're going to go out to Denise and say, Denise, I need maps to these locations. Denise will call you many times and you'll be irritated. This method can create significant amplification. For instance, a small query might yield a much larger DNS response, overwhelming the target. An amplified DDoS attack is an amplified DDoS attack. The attacker exploits vulnerable servers like Denise or network time protocol servers to amplify the volume of attack traffic. The whole purpose is that they just have a little request that amplifies significantly back to whoever their target is. That's an example of amplification. Now we also have reflected, which at first is going to sound a lot like amplification, but not quite. A reflected attack is a type of cyber attack where an attacker exploits a third-party server to send traffic to a victim's network, making it appear as though the traffic is coming from that server rather than the attacker's own. This technique is often used in conjunction with amplification attacks, where the attacker not only reflects, but also amplifies the traffic sent to the target. The key characteristics of a reflected attack is that the attack traffic is not generated directly from the attacker's system, but instead it is generated from a third-party server, which can obscure the attacker's identity and make it harder for defenders to trace the source of the attack. If they combine this with amplification techniques, reflected attacks can generate a substantial amount of traffic directed at the victim. So again, things you probably wouldn't think about, right? Things you would not think about. Just another example of how attackers think, right? Example situation, the attacker scans the internet to find open DNS resolvers. These are DNS servers configured to respond to queries from any IP address. So if any computer needs to get a roadmap to somewhere out there on the internet, they go to Denise. So that's what a DNS resolver is. It resolves URLs to IP addresses. which is a common misconfiguration. If DNS servers are configured to respond to queries from any IP address, that is a common misconfiguration. The attacker compiles a list of these open resolvers, which are often publicly accessible. So they make a list of these, and they can generate large responses to specific types of queries. Once the attacker has identified a set of spoofs, open DNS servers, they craft a DNS query that asks for a specific domain name, such as www.acpc.corp. They say, from your computer is coming, where is this domain? The attacker spoofs the source IP address, saying they're you, and replaces it with the IP address of ABC Corp's web server. This means that the DNS server will think the request is coming from ABC Corp instead of the attacker's system. So the goal is to shut down ABC Corp. The attacker then sends these crafted DNS queries to multiple openness DNS resolvers simultaneously. So many DNS are getting asked for a map to ABC Corp all at the same time. Each query is small in size, typically just a few bytes. Each open DNS resolver receives the query and generates a large response. And that will shut down abc.corp. That web server there that's hosting that website will receive a ton of traffic from Denise, causing it to shut down. And that is an example of a reflected attack. And we've got a couple of DNS attacks we need to talk about. Remember what Denise does. Denise is the Google Maps of the internet. She resolves URLs to IP addresses. But you can think of her as the Google Maps of the internet, or the information help desk of the internet if you want. All right, refers to any malicious attempt or compromise to exploit the domain name system. That's what the domain name system attacks are. There's a couple you need to know about, specifically DNS poisoning. This is probably the most important one to know about. Anytime you see this word, poisoning, I want you to think redirection. This equals redirection. When something is poisoned, it will redirect somebody from one spot to another. So where they're supposed to go, A to B, that's how they're supposed to go. They end up being redirected around B to C. That's redirection, okay? This happens when your computer's A. It says this is where your computer's at. They're trying to get to B, which is Disney World or Foot Locker or whatever it is. And someone has went in and tampered with Denise's maps to redirect you to C, which is where the bad guy is. That's where you want your computer to end up. Now that's called DNS poisoning. It's also known as DNS cache poisoning or DNS spoofing. And it's a type of cyber attack where malicious data is inserted in a DNS resolver's cache, causing the DNS server to return incorrect or fraudulent IP addresses. So if you just think about this, remember your computer asks Denise for maps to different areas on the internet based on what you as a human want to visit. It returns those maps to you whenever you ask for it. And your computer will store it so it can access those maps later. Now, a bad guy gets into Denise's stack of maps here and manipulates the data in there. And now Denise is giving you maps to go to C. That's what DNS poisoning is. We also have a DNS brute force. This is a type of attack where an attacker attempts to guess or brute force the correct domain name or subdomain by systematically querying a DNS server with a large number of potential domain names or subdomains. So this is a way to footprint an organization's network by brute forcing. So think of a bad guy. He's simply asking Denise if maps exist. Does the map exist? Since Denise will say yes or no, that's all she says, yes or no, he can potentially brute force, try over and over again until he finds the existing domains that do exist. And he can use those to create a list of those domains. And now he's got a list of computers he can attack. Next is DNS hijacking. And this is an attack where someone takes over your DNS account. So when you create a domain, when you purchase a domain, you have to create an account. If they're able to take over your account, this happens because someone is using weak passwords on their account. This allows the attacker to manipulate or redirect traffic to a legitimate website to a malicious or fraudulent website. They can do whatever they want if they take your account.
Do you want to thwart these network villains like a pro? Come to Intellectual Point. We have live instructor-led training and on-demand training for cybersecurity and AI courses. We will help you launch your career in IT. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like and subscribe to Intellectual Point.